Here's something nobody tells you about being broke. It has almost nothing to do with your bank account. Broke is a season. Poor is a decision you keep making long after the season should have changed. And if you're honest with yourself right now, some part of you already knows the difference because you've watched people with less than you walk into rooms you can't get into. And you've told yourself it was luck or connections or timing. It wasn't. It was 5 things. Just 5. And by the time we're done here, you're going to know exactly what they are, and more importantly, you're going to know which one you've been skipping. I want you to sit with that word for a second. Broke. Not poor, not struggling, just broke, temporarily. The way a bone is broken, the way a promise is broken. Something that happened, not something that defines you forever. Most people carry it the other way around. They let a temporary condition write a permanent story about who they are. And once that story gets written, they stop looking for the door out, because on some level, they've decided the door doesn't exist for someone like them. That's the real trap, not the empty bank account, the story you build around it. Maybe you've been telling yourself that things will turn around once the economy shifts, once your boss finally notices you, once you get that one break you've been waiting for since you were 22. Perhaps right now you're sitting somewhere quiet, phone in hand, doing what you always do at this hour, which is scrolling past somebody else's success and feeling that familiar mixture of admiration and resentment. Maybe you've built a whole philosophy around the idea that the game is rigged, that people who made it had advantages you didn't, that the world simply works better for other people than it works for you. And listen, some of that story has a little truth buried in it somewhere. But most of it is a story you tell so you don't have to look at the parts of your life that are actually within your control. Perhaps you've started 10 things and finished 2. Maybe you know exactly what you should be doing every morning and you do it anyway, some days when you feel like it. And that's the whole problem right there, hiding in that one sentence. When you feel like it. Maybe you've noticed that your paycheck comes in, and by some strange trick of arithmetic, it's already gone before it even really arrived. Perhaps you've caught yourself explaining again to a friend or a parent or a mirror exactly why this year has been harder than last year, exactly why the timing has never quite lined up for you the way it seems to line up for everyone else. Maybe you've bought the book. Maybe you've bought several of the books, and they're sitting on a shelf somewhere, half read, full of good intentions that never made it past chapter 3. Perhaps you tell yourself you're a late bloomer, or that you just haven't found the right opportunity yet, or that once things calm down at work, once the kids are a little older, once you catch your breath, that's when the real changes begin. And maybe, if you're honest, some quiet part of you has started to wonder if this is simply who you are now, not who you were meant to be. Just who you've settled into being while you waited for a feeling that never showed up to give you permission to start. Here's what I want you to notice about all of that. None of it makes you weak. None of it makes you lazy or broken or somehow behind the people you compare yourself to at 2 in the morning. It makes you human. And it makes you exactly like almost everyone who eventually turned their life around before finally deciding to turn it around. The gap between where you are and where you want to be was never really about intelligence or luck or timing. It was about 5 specific things done consistently, and everything else people tell you about success is just noise dressed up to sound more complicated than it actually is. Here's the truth that's going to set the tone for the next 30 minutes together. Success isn't complicated. It isn't a secret club. And it isn't hoarded by people smarter than you. Success is a handful of simple disciplines, practiced every single day until the compound interest of those disciplines becomes undeniable. And failure, the broke, stuck, waiting for permission kind of failure, is simply a handful of errors in judgment, repeated every day until the weight of them becomes impossible to ignore. Neither one happens overnight. That's the part that trips people up. They want the harvest without ever admitting they skipped the planting. So let's plant something today. Let's walk through the 5 steps, one at a time, the way a mentor would walk you through them on a porch, not a stage. No hype, No shouting, just the truth, spoken plainly, the way it should have been given to you years ago. Step 1 is this. You have to stop waiting to feel like it. Motivation is a wonderful thing, and I love motivation, but motivation is like a fire that somebody else lit for you. It's exciting while it burns, and it goes cold the moment the wind changes. Discipline is different. Discipline is the fire you build yourself brick by brick, so it doesn't need somebody else's spark to keep it going. Here's what nobody wants to hear. You are not going to feel like getting up early most mornings. You are not going to feel like making the calls, reading the book, saving the money, having the hard conversation. Feelings are unreliable weather. Some days sunny, some days storming, and if you build your entire life around waiting for sunshine, you're going to miss most of the growing season. Think about a farmer for a second. A farmer doesn't check his mood before he plants in the spring. He doesn't say, well, I don't feel particularly inspired today. Maybe I'll skip this season and catch the next one. He knows something you need to know. The seasons don't wait for your feelings. Spring shows up on schedule whether you're ready or not, and if you didn't plant, summer won't magically produce a harvest out of sympathy for you. It's not what happens to you that determines your harvest. It's what you do while nobody's watching, in the season when nothing looks like it's working yet. Here's what makes this so hard to accept. Discipline doesn't announce itself. Nobody claps for you the day you decide to save $50 instead of spending it, or the day you read for 20 minutes instead of scrolling, or the day you go to bed on time instead of staying up numbing yourself with noise. Those moments are invisible. And because they're invisible, they feel unimportant. And because they feel unimportant, most people quietly skip them, over and over, until skipping becomes the whole pattern of a life. But here's the thing about invisible moments. They're not actually invisible, they're compounding. Every disciplined choice is a brick, and no single brick looks like much of anything on its own, but stack a few thousand of them in the same direction and suddenly you're looking at a wall, or a house, or a fortune, depending on what you were building the whole time. And here's something worth remembering the next time discipline feels pointless. Nobody who built anything real ever felt like doing it every single day. Not once. Not ever. They simply stopped treating their feelings as the deciding vote. The feeling would show up, doubt would show up, tiredness would show up, and they'd do the thing anyway. And somewhere around day 30 or day 60, something interesting happens. The discipline stops feeling like a fight. It starts feeling like who you are. That's the whole transformation, hiding in plain sight, disguised as something boring. So here's your action step for principle number 1. Pick one discipline, just one. Something small enough that skipping it would feel ridiculous. And do it every day for the next 30 days, regardless of how you feel. Not because the discipline itself will make you rich. Because doing something you don't feel like doing on command is the actual skill that makes you rich. That's the muscle. Everything else is just reps. Step 2 is where most people quietly check out because step 2 asks you to stop blaming. And I know, some of what happened to you actually was unfair. Somebody did wrong by you. The company did lay you off right when you needed the stability most. The family you were born into didn't hand you the head start that other families hand their kids. All of that can be true, and none of it changes what I'm about to say. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. Write that sentence somewhere you'll see it every single day, because it's going to be the difference between the version of you that stays broke and the version of you that doesn't. 2 people can lose the exact same job on the exact same day. One spends the next 6 months explaining to everyone who will listen why the company was wrong to let him go. The other spends those same 6 months building a skill, reaching out, applying, adjusting, rebuilding. Same circumstance. 2 completely different harvests 12 months later. Blame feels good. In the moment, I understand that. It feels like relief, like you've been let off the hook. But blame is a full-time job that pays you nothing. Every hour you spend explaining why it's not your fault is an hour you didn't spend making it different. And here's the part that stings a little. Blame is comfortable precisely because it asks nothing of you. If it's someone else's fault, then there's nothing for you to fix, nothing for you to change, nothing uncomfortable for you to look at in the mirror tonight. Responsibility is heavier to carry, but it's the only weight that actually builds muscle. The moment you stop asking who did this to me and start asking what am I going to do about it, something shifts. Not around you, inside you. The circumstances might stay exactly the same for a while longer, but the person facing those circumstances stops being a victim of them and starts being a student of them, and students eventually graduate. I want to be clear about something because this step gets misunderstood a lot. Taking responsibility doesn't mean pretending nothing bad ever happened to you. It doesn't mean excusing the people who wronged you or letting them off some imaginary hook they deserve to be on. It simply means refusing to let their actions be the final word on what happens to you next. They wrote one chapter. You're still writing the rest of the book, whether you act like it or not. And the moment you hand the pen back to them by staying stuck in the blame, you've given away the one thing that was always yours to keep. Here's your action step. Today, pick one area of your life where you've been quietly blaming someone else, your parents, your boss, the economy, your ex, whoever it is, and ask yourself one honest question. What is the 1% of this situation that actually is mine to fix? Just 1%. Start there. You don't need to own it all. You just need to own your piece of it because that piece is the only piece you were ever going to be able to change anyway. Step 3 might be the most uncomfortable one because step 3 isn't about you at all. It's about the 5 people you let closest to you. Here's something worth sitting with. You will eventually start to think like the people you spend the most time around. You'll start to earn close to what they earn, worry about what they worry about, dream the size of dreams they allow themselves to dream. Not because you're weak, because you're human, and humans absorb their environment the way a plant absorbs the soil it's planted in. You could have the best seeds in the world, but plant them in poisoned soil and watch what happens. Now, I'm not telling you to abandon people. That's not what this is. I'm asking you to get honest about who's speaking into your life on a regular basis and whether their conversation is planting ambition in you or watering your excuses. Are the people around you talking about what they're building, or are they talking about why nothing works? Are they celebrating when you grow, or does your growth seem to make them a little quiet, a little strange, a little distant? That tells you something important. This isn't always malicious, by the way. Most people who quietly discourage you aren't villains. They're scared usually because your growth reminds them of the growing they've been avoiding in their own life, and it's easier to talk you out of change than to sit with the discomfort of watching you attempt something they gave up on. You don't have to resent them for that. You just have to notice it and adjust how much weight you give their opinion on the things that matter most to you. The conversations you have on repeat become the beliefs you carry without questioning. So choose those conversations the way you'd choose the soil for something you actually intend to harvest one day. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it, and who you allow to keep repeating a different message in your ear every single day. You can do everything right in the first 2 steps, become disciplined, take full responsibility, and still find yourself stuck, simply because the voices closest to you are quietly telling you a smaller story than the one you're trying to live. Environment is stronger than willpower, almost always, which is exactly why the people who change their lives usually have to change their surroundings a little bit first. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just intentionally, one conversation at a time. Here's your action step. This week, identify one relationship where the conversation consistently pulls you down, and one relationship, even a small one, a mentor, an author whose work you follow, a stranger doing what you want to do, where the conversation pulls you up. Spend a little less time in the first place. Spend a little more time in the second. You don't need to burn any bridges. You just need to build new ones on purpose instead of by accident. Step 4 is about learning to read the season you're actually in instead of the season you wish you were in. Life moves in seasons, same as nature. And here's the mistake almost everybody makes. They try to harvest during winter. They wait until they're desperate, until the bills are already late, until the crisis has already landed. And that's exactly when they decide it's finally time to plant. But winter isn't for planting. Winter is for surviving what you failed to prepare for in the seasons before it. Spring is for planting, when nothing you do shows results yet, and it takes real discipline to keep showing up. Summer is for tending, watering what you planted, pulling the weeds, protecting the small green shoots that don't look like much of anything yet. And fall is for harvesting, gathering what those earlier seasons quietly built while you weren't watching. Here's the hard truth about seasons. You can't skip one. You can't negotiate your way from spring straight into fall. Every person who looks like they got lucky, who looks like their harvest came out of nowhere, spent seasons you never saw them living through, seasons where nothing was visible yet, seasons where they kept showing up to an empty-looking field because they trusted something was happening underground, even when the surface gave them no proof. That's the part that separates the people who eventually build something from the people who quit right before the proof arrives. They kept faith with an invisible process. So ask yourself honestly, which season are you in right now? And are you doing the work that season actually requires? Or are you demanding a harvest from a field you never planted? Here's your action step. Identify one thing in your life that's currently in winter. A relationship, a career, your health, your finances, whatever it is. And instead of panicking about the lack of harvest, ask what planting should have happened 2 seasons ago. Then go plant it today. Late is still earlier than never. Step 5 is the one that actually ties the other 4 together, and it's simply this. You have to become more before you can attract more. Most people spend their whole lives trying to get more money, more opportunity, more recognition, without ever asking whether the person they currently are is actually capable of holding on to more if it showed up tomorrow. Here's a question worth sitting with quietly. If your income doubled overnight, would the person you currently are know what to do with it? Or would you find creative new ways to end up right back where you started? Money has an uncomfortable habit of finding its way back to the level of the person holding it, unless that person has grown to match it. This is why lottery winners go broke, and why some people who start with nothing keep building wealth again and again, even after losing it. It was never really about the money. It's about who you had to become to generate it in the first place. Think of it this way. If you handed a seed a bigger pot but never changed the soil, you wouldn't get a bigger plant. You'd get the same plant struggling to fill a space it wasn't built to fill. Growth on the outside is always downstream of growth on the inside. And skipping that order is why so many windfalls disappear almost as fast as they arrived. Work harder on yourself than you work on anything else, because everything else in your life, your income, your relationships, your opportunities, is downstream from the person you're becoming. This is the step people rush past, because it doesn't look productive in the moment. Reading, reflecting, learning a skill that doesn't pay off for months. None of that feels like progress the way a busy calendar feels like progress. But busy and growing are not the same thing, and only one of them compounds. Here's your action step. Spend 30 minutes today investing in yourself, not your job, not your business, you. Read something that stretches you. Learn one new skill. Sit quietly and get honest about who you actually are becoming, month over month. That 30 minutes, repeated daily, is worth more than any lottery ticket you'll ever buy, and it's the one investment that can never be taken from you. Now, I want to get a little more honest with you than I have been so far, because I think you deserve that before we close this out. I've watched people, good people, smart people, sit on the exact 5 steps I just gave you and do absolutely nothing with them. Not because the steps didn't work, but because somewhere along the way they decided they'd rather be comfortable than accountable. It's easier to nod along to something like this, feel that little rush of inspiration, and go right back to the same routine tomorrow morning. I've done it myself. I've had seasons where I knew exactly what I needed to plant, and I let the season pass anyway, telling myself, next month, next year, once things settle down. Things never settle down. That's not how life works. There is no arriving at a calm, easy stretch where discipline finally becomes optional. The season is going to change whether you're ready or not. And the only question that actually matters is whether you'll be the person who planted something or the person still explaining 5 years from now why the harvest never came. I think about the version of myself who kept waiting for the right moment. And honestly, it's a little painful to picture him now, standing in a field he never planted, wondering why nothing was growing. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't stupid. He was just waiting to feel ready, and readiness never once showed up ahead of the work. It always showed up somewhere in the middle of the work, after the discomfort had already been paid, never before. And if I could go back and say one thing to him, it wouldn't be some grand speech. It would just be, stop waiting, plant something today, even something small, especially something small, because small planted consistently beats large planted never. Every single time. Discipline is the bridge between broke and free, and it's not a bridge you cross once. It's one you rebuild every single day, plank by plank, whether you feel inspired or not. You don't need more talent than the person who made it before you. You don't need better luck, a better birth, a better break. You need to become more, plant on schedule, stop blaming, guard your circle, and read your season honestly. That's it. That's the whole thing, dressed up in 1,000 different books and seminars. But underneath all of it, that's the entire secret. And it was never really a secret at all. It was just simple. And simple is harder to sell than complicated. So most people go looking for something complicated instead. Somewhere out there is a version of you, a year from now, 5 years from now, who either thanks you for what you did tonight or quietly resents you for what you kept putting off. That version of you doesn't exist yet. Not fully, but he's being built right now, in this exact moment, by whether you close this video and go right back to the same pattern, or whether you actually plant one seed before you sleep. Nobody is coming to plant it for you. Nobody ever was. That was always going to be your job. And the good news, the genuinely good news buried inside everything we just walked through, is that it's a job you're fully capable of doing, starting tonight, with nothing more than the 5 things you already know now that you didn't know 30 minutes ago. Here's the line I want you to remember long after this video ends. You didn't get stuck because life was unfair to you. You got stuck because you kept waiting for a feeling that was never going to show up on its own. So here's your challenge for the next 24 hours. And I mean this literally, not as a suggestion. Pick one of the 5 steps we just walked through. The one that stung the most while you were listening, because that's usually the one you need most, and do something about it today, before you sleep tonight. Not tomorrow, not once things settle down, today. And when you're done, come back here and comment one single word, the discipline you're committing to starting tonight. Discipline, responsibility, circle, season, or growth. Just one word. Let it be a promise you made in public, because a promise you've said out loud is a lot harder to quietly abandon than one you only whispered to yourself. The season is already changing. The only question left is whether you're going to be ready for it this time.